Hey, IT manager, if you want to migrate your file server file shares to Microsoft 365, there's a free tool available to you through your Microsoft 365 tenant called Migration Manager. And you can use it to sync a copy of your file server file shares to Microsoft 365. Then, when the sync's 100% complete, the tool maintains an updated live sync until you're ready to cut over your company files to Microsoft 365 file storage. And you disable your file server file shares and be rid of an on premises file server and all of its limitations forever. It works similar to how many of you migrated from an on premises Exchange server to Exchange Online inside Microsoft 365. You configure to sync between mailboxes in your on premises Exchange server and your mailboxes in Microsoft 365 Exchange Online. A sync's maintained until you're ready to cut everyone over to Exchange Online, and then you gracefully decommission your on premises Exchange server. Now, that being said, there's some big differences with a file share migration to Microsoft 365 versus a mailbox migration to Exchange Online. With the Exchange migration, the users were using Outlook before the migration to connect to their mailboxes, and they're using Outlook after the migration to connect to their mailboxes. And everything looked the same to them. And for the IT manager, the backend administration of Exchange Online is very similar to Exchange Server on premises. Most everything looked pretty much the same to them there as well. This is not the case when migrating on premises file shares to Microsoft 365. There's a big difference for both the users and the IT managers after this migration. There's some serious professional change management and training that needs to take place to avoid a failed migration and ultimately a project rollback, or more likely, a project that forever remains in the idea stage but never actually gets executed and completed. At Cerulean, in our Microsoft 365 cloud services practice, we build the shared folders in Microsoft Teams, not SharePoint and not OneDrive. Now, the basis of all document storage in Microsoft 365, of course, is SharePoint. And many years ago, we used to migrate on premises file server shares to SharePoint document libraries, accessed through Windows File Explorer through the OneDrive Sync client to replicate a map drive look and feel for the users that they're used to. Around 2019, with the rise of Microsoft Teams becoming Microsoft's core hub for modern collaboration, we switched to building file shares in Microsoft 365 using Microsoft Teams channels. And again, access through Windows File Explorer through the OneDrive Sync client. Then the users could access the same file shares through Windows File Explorer as well as inside Microsoft Teams, whichever was most comfortable to them. And that future proofed our clients for modern collaboration as well as modern IT security management inside Microsoft 365. Now, unlike an Exchange Online migration, the users have to be trained and prepped on the front end, and the internal IT admins need to be trained and prepped to manage the back end and prepped to provide ongoing help desk support for a configuration both the users and the IT admins aren't used to. Configuring, securing, sharing, and supporting shared files in Teams and OneDrive is not at all the same as sharing files through a Windows server file server. Migrating on premises file shares to Microsoft 365 only happens once in a company's lifetime, which means an internal IT manager can't get the experience of doing these migrations over and over to get the confidence to plan out and execute a high profile migration like migrating shared files. And then confidently supporting it after the migration. And look, I've said this in a lot of videos. I feel for internal IT managers. I was one for the first 3 years of my IT career. Internal IT managers are often strapped for resources, don't get ongoing training or certification roadmaps by their company, and have their hands full keeping the existing IT system configuration hunkering along. So the key message here is that hooking up Migration Manager and doing a copy sync, while not easy, isn't the hard part. The real work is done before and after achieving a 100% successful sync copy between your file server and Microsoft 365, which is where a company like Cerulean comes in, because you're not going to be able to just Google search your way through this. In our practice, we have to analyze the existing on-premises server file shares and make determinations on what is synced and what isn't. And what is synced and what isn't is never a simple matter of shooting out an email to all the department heads of your company and asking them to get back to you about what files are old, useless, and can be left behind in the migration. These department heads will never respond to that email, as they're not certain, nor is it realistic to ask them to prioritize in their work schedule the tedious work of determining what files they do or do not need. And those old file shares have so much useless data on them. Yet We as IT managers keep absorbing the cost to carry them forward, securing them, and backing them up from one file server refresh to the next. Data that nobody can confidently say can be deleted. So it's better to just draw a line in the sand and state that as part of your plan, you're only migrating files that have been created or modified in the past 5 or 10 years. But reassure everyone that also as part of your plan, you're going to hold on to that server as an archive and make an online backup in case someone needs some obscure old file that was older than your 5 to 10 year old cutoff date. And even after that work is done, we still need to determine which shared folders need to be split up or renamed or reconfigured because the original file share structure will screw up the OneDrive sync client because there are too many files, invalid characters, or the file name path is too long, or we have crazy disinherited permissions we have to work through because of layers of subnested folders or on the fly permission setting by previous IT managers who are long gone from the company. And the OneDrive sync client works incredibly well, provided you do the proper analysis of the old file shares and the configuration of the new file shares. It does a great job of only keeping files synced to your computer that you actually work with. For all other files, it syncs the name of the file so you can search on it in Windows File Explorer, but doesn't take up space on your computer. If you stop working with a file after a while, it goes back to only syncing the name of the file, but the file itself is not kept on your computer, taking up storage space. I do a demo of this in this video here, which I'll link to in the description below. Now, once we've analyzed your file server, determine your line in the sand as to the cutoff date for what gets copied over, and then broken up any gigantic shared folders into multiple subfolders with invalid characters or lengthy file paths or messy permissions on the originating file server, we can now commence the sync. So while we're waiting to get a 100% clean sync notification with the migration manager tool, in the meantime, we need to train the users. We need to train the users on what their file shares will look like to them after the migration, how they'll access the file shares through Windows File Explorer, how they'll access the shared files through Teams. We need to connect the dots between the old Windows Server file sharing system and the new cloud based Teams and OneDrive file sharing system. Now, I'm going to show you how this will look like in a demo in a moment, because this part is updated from the last video I did years ago. But let me paint a picture of this. Instead of map drives, S drive, P drive, Z drive, the shared files will have little chain link icons next to them. And the users can add these to the quick access area of Windows File Explorer or even rename them to something that is more meaningful to them. And even better, these connections or what used to be like map drives will show up in the user's OneDrive in Windows File Explorer and the OneDrive web app and the OneDrive mobile app all automatically. And that's super convenient and super consistent for the user and will result in less IT help desk calls to the IT team. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like. So here I have my desktop, and I'm going to connect the dots between map drives on a file server, that look and feel versus what the user sees when they have the equivalent of map drives inside of Microsoft 365. So here I've got an example, which would be like the sales folder on a file server. So here's the S drive, and inside of the sales, the S drive here, I've got some subfolders and I've got just some files on the root folder. So I'm going to be zeroing in on the root, the equivalent of what would be the root folder and storing things on the root folder, and the equivalent of creating a subfolder inside of Microsoft 365. You can see on the left here, I've got sales-general and sales-proposals. This is the sales team inside of Microsoft Team and the general channel. This is the sales team inside of Microsoft Teams and the proposals channel. So before I go further into this, let me go into Teams. And right here, I have a team called sales. And whenever we create a team inside of Microsoft Teams, we always get a general channel. And we have a files tab right up here. And here's all the files and folders that are in that files channel. And we also have a proposals channel. And if I go click on there, it will also have its own files tab and all the files and folders that are in the proposals channel. Now going back over here, you can see I have sales general and sales proposals. sales team, general channel, sales team, proposals channel, because each channel gets a files tab. And where this goes is when I go back into Teams and I create this team and I have the general channel and I add a proposals channel, and they each have their own files tab. So you can think of this as subfolders if you want to create those. But when I go over into, and I'm in the files tab, and when I go over here and I go add shortcut to OneDrive, we don't use sync anymore. Add shortcut to OneDrive. This is the way to do it. What happens is that this now gets populated inside of OneDrive. So if I go over to OneDrive and in here, if I scroll down, you can see I have sales general and sales proposals. They're inside of my OneDrive account, which is very handy. So wherever I connect into OneDrive, I'm going to see this link. And you can see it also has these little chain link icons. Those little chain link icons, those are the modern equivalent of map drives inside of Microsoft 365. And once I have these chain link icons here, I can right click on this and I can choose to add to quick access, which I've done over here. And it looks just like map drives for the user. And the user can even choose to rename these if they want to something that's more user friendly. If they just want to call this sales and remove the dash general, they can do it. If they just want to call this proposals, they can do it. Now, this link follows this user whenever they connect into OneDrive. So right now I'm inside of Windows File Explorer, but let's go into the OneDrive web app. So I log into Microsoft 365. I go in here, I can click on OneDrive. That takes me over here. Here's sales dash general, sales dash proposals. And that was automatically put in there. I didn't have to do anything more in order to have that in there. This follows me wherever I go. As a matter of fact, this will also follow me if I go into the OneDrive mobile app. So I'm here on my iPhone and then I click on OneDrive. And then I can scroll down right here and I can see there's sales general and here's sales proposals. And I have the same access just like I do inside a Windows File Explorer or the OneDrive app or in the OneDrive mobile app. This connection follows the user wherever they go. And then the question sometimes becomes, well, how do I manage permissions? Well, it's real simple. And that's a key reason why we do this inside of Microsoft Teams. So here's the sales team. I go in here and I can manage the team. And we have the owners of the team and we have members, and we can also add external third-party guests. It's really simple and straightforward. And sometimes you might want to be able to have a subfolder or a channel which only certain people in the team have access to. And for that, all we have to do is add a channel, and then we can choose it to be private, and only specific people on the team will have access to it. So you would create that, and then you can add specific people to it, and then just not everybody in the general sales team would have access to that. And now once we have these files and folders moved off of our file server and into Microsoft 365 configured through Teams, we have the capability of using cloud files. Cloud files are where OneDrive synchronizes the name of the folder or the name of the file, but not actually take up space on your hard drive. So you can still search around, click around inside of Windows File Explorer, but it's only going to actually take up space on your hard drive with files that you're actually working with. So you can see right here, everything that has a green check, these are files that I've actually worked with, and OneDrive is keeping track of what I'm working with and what I'm not, and actually synchronizes those on my computer, so I have those available to me offline. Files that are just cloud icons, those are only available to me online. Now, you can also change that if you want. If you want to go to a folder and you want to right click on this and you say, always keep on this device, it'll always maintain that folder or files or individual files synchronized on your computer. Or if you have something that it does synchronize, but you don't want it taking space anymore, you can right click on it and choose to free up space. So you can control that sync capability manually, But for IT managers, the big thing there is if I have some huge folder, I'm not necessarily going to have people synchronizing all the files locally onto their computer. That's usually a major concern for IT managers. And files on demand technology with OneDrive does not work that way. The users can control that manually, or you can just let OneDrive figure it out for itself, which is what I do. And all the years that I've been using files on demand in OneDrive, I've never actually gone on to manually tell it to hold files locally. It always does a great job of just figuring out what I need to work with. Now, a really nice feature of having your files inside Microsoft 365 is document versioning. So a user on their own, without calling IT, can just go to a file, right click on it, go OneDrive, version history, and they can pull up the versions of this file that are available and they can choose to restore. Or they can view the file directly, the previous version of it, and choose to save it as a file somewhere else without restoring over the existing file. These are really nice features to let users manage this on their own. They can get to work faster, do what they need to do, and they don't have to wait for IT to take care of this. And usually for IT, these are kind of mundane chores to do restores. And it's also important to note that when we're connected like this with shared department files, we now have a recycle bin. So if somebody with a linked folder or a mapped drive to Microsoft 365 were to delete a file in here, these will show up in the user's recycle bin. So if I go down here, there are files here that I have deleted that are shared files inside of Microsoft 365, but I can find them in here and I can restore them in here. Now, it's also important to note that there are first and second stage recycle bins inside of Microsoft 365. So the first stage recycle bin you'll have access to here. You can restore these directly from your recycle bin. But if I'm looking deeper for files and I deleted something and then maybe I accidentally or intentionally, but didn't mean to, deleted a file and it went to the recycle bin, but then maybe somehow that file got deleted in the recycle bin, then there's a second stage recycle bin. So if I go a little deeper into Microsoft 365 and the website, I can go to that sales folder and I can go to the recycle bin right here and I can find files, but it'll say, can't find what you're looking for, check the second stage recycle bin. And so administrators would have access to that and they could recover those files for you if you needed. So it protects the users and helps IT out by giving these files a second chance in case they're deleted or then double deleted. And even then, we can protect against double deletion if we want to retain all files for a certain period of time because we want to protect the files or we want to meet compliance policies. And that's where we get into retention policies, another nice feature when you have your files inside of Microsoft 365. So if I go into Microsoft Purview and I go to data lifecycle management and I can edit the retention policy, and I have one here. So I go through here and I have this retention policy which says for all of my files inside of Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, I can retain these items for 7 years. And at the end of the 7-year period, we would delete them. So retain them for 7 years. We're going to base it on the date the item was last modified, and then we're going to delete the items automatically. I do that for everything in my company, including emails, but we're just talking about files right now. For all files except for HR and legal, and those have a forever retention policy on them. And this demo that I did here, this is the same type of demo and orientation we do live for the users when we do these types of projects for our clients. We need to connect the dots for our clients' users in a live Teams meeting where we have the best shot at them paying attention to show them the before and after of this migration. And we need to show them why this is so much better for them. We need to show them the big improvements, such as not needing a VPN to connect their files remotely anymore, or being able to restore previous versions of files on their own without calling IT, or being able to share files and control access through sending people links instead of attachments, or that multiple users can be working on the same file at the same time, or that they can work with files offline. And when they reconnect online, the changes will be synced automatically with other users' changes. or that there's a recycle bin now. And if they delete a file, they can restore the file on their own without calling IT. In our Microsoft 365 cloud services practice, we do two types of training for a file migration to Microsoft 365. A live training orientation, which I've been speaking about, where we spend 20 to 30 minutes connecting the dots for the users from the old system to the new system and doing a live demo on how they'll access their shared files as well as all the new features that they're going to get. The second training we do as part of our change management is a micro video training system. Micro video training uses 1 to 2 minute video segments in a sequence to train a user on technology to get them from beyond not knowing what they don't know and to do it fast and as they can get to it while working in their regular day-to-day schedules. I talk more about how we do this training in this video here, which I'll link to in the description, but I'm going to explain a bit more about this right now. So, when a company is making a big investment by properly and fully integrating Microsoft 365, we also need to upgrade the end user skills beyond a basic orientation. This involves training the users on the Teams and OneDrive desktop, web, and mobile apps. We have the users complete a sequence of short, to the point, demo heavy videos where a useful app feature is explained to them and then showing the feature to them in a demo, all within a 1 to 2 minute video clip. And then every few videos, they're asked a quiz question to make sure they're actually paying attention, not just clicking through. And within 30 to 60 minutes over a few weeks, they'll have learned the best new features of working with files inside of Microsoft 365. And their skills will have been upgraded along with the IT system that they're working with. And we also need to train the IT managers. We need to show them how to easily add or remove users or guest users, how to access the second stage recycle bin, and how to set and manage retention and compliance policies for company files so that the files are protected from double deletions or to meet data compliance requirements in their industry. And how to create new shared folders and teams and how to set up teams restrictions so people aren't just creating any team groups and folders whenever and wherever they want. And then there, of course, is the matter of properly configuring the data security management for your files in a modern Microsoft 365 XDR and MDM context. Sometimes companies talk to us and ask if we can just migrate the files using their existing Microsoft 365 Business Standard or E3 license without fully integrating Microsoft Defender XDR and Intune. While technically you could, it isn't something we do. We perform file migrations to Microsoft 365 using a fully and properly deployed Microsoft 365 Business Premium, Microsoft 365 E5, or Microsoft 365 F1 license before we even begin the sync of a client's data into Microsoft 365. We get Microsoft Defender XDR and Intune configured and deployed across all Microsoft 365 cloud services and end user Windows OS and Mac OS computers and iOS and Android mobile apps. Intune is how we build, configure, encrypt, secure, and update all of the company Windows OS computers and apps and keep them that way with compliance checks and conditional access controls. Microsoft Defender XDR is how we protect user identities, devices, apps, and data against known and unknown threats. And particularly for our file migration, Microsoft Intune is where we manage the configuration of the OneDrive app on computers and mobile devices, which is critical to the smooth experience for the users and keeping IT low stress for the IT managers. We use Microsoft Intune to control where company data can be moved and sent. We do this in Intune for Windows OS, iOS, Android, and Mac OS. We can easily control what devices and apps are allowed to access and hold company files. We can set up compliance policies for devices requiring basic device security policies like having an up-to-date OS, a lockout screen, be encrypted, and only being able to use the Office desktop or mobile apps. If these super basic requirements aren't met, that device or app can't connect to or hold company data, even if the user trying to access the data is 100% validated. And if someone leaves the company and they have company files on their personal smartphone, the company data and apps will automatically come off that device as the app will regularly confirm it has a valid license. And it's also the time we can put in security controls on files people are bringing into our Microsoft 365 IT system. In a Microsoft Defender XDR security system we deploy, every file someone brings into the company is scanned for known viruses, as well as being put into a special virtual container and seeing if that file does anything suspicious. And even if that file isn't a known virus, but is doing something suspicious that might represent an unknown threat, it'll be blocked. The point, of course, is to keep your shared file folders clean in your brand spanking new shared file system inside of Microsoft 365. I talk in much more detail about Microsoft Defender XDR and Intune in this video here, and I will link to it in the description below. And you can also take it up one more level by using Microsoft 365 E5 security, the best IT security system that Microsoft makes and what we use at Cerillion ourselves. We can protect your company against insider threats where Microsoft 365 E5 can see a user doing unusual things like huge downloads, huge copies, or huge deletions of company data based on a trailing 30-day behavior pattern of the users in your specific company. If a user is intentionally or unintentionally copying the entire company sales folder, maybe you'd like an automated response to take place where the user is disconnected and their account disabled pending a review by IT. So, if you are interested to get rid of your file server or even move your files from another cloud file sharing service like Dropbox, Box, Ignite, and into a fully and properly configured Microsoft 365 cloud services system, you can visit our website, check us out, and if you want to set up a call, fill out our contact form. We work with private for-profit companies based in the US and Canada with between 30 to 200 users that are not in IT. Microsoft 365 cloud service sales, integration, and support is all we do at Cerillion. We can take you somewhere. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.